A stand which exists detached from its user is not an untested concept as a whole in JoJo, be it either with parasitic stands like Cheap Trick or living dead stands like Notorious B.I.G. At the same time, it's true that stands have attached themselves to non-living or non-animal things before, such as the tree of Sugar Mountain Springs or the leaves of Shakedown Road. Though what if a stand were to attach itself to a concept or legend long after the death of its user and lingering in the form of its ability? This is how you'd get the troublesome and terrifying taboo tender known as the Milagro Man. Milagro Man is an urban legend, a curse, and a stand that exists throughout the world of the Steel Ball Run universe, being very well known among many different establishments, especially ones in Moriocho. And while the stand itself doesn't make a physical appearance in the story of JoJolion, the effects of its ability do run afoul over the course of the story, as after stealing someone's bank card and correctly guessing the digits to their bank account, Joshu finds himself becoming more and more wealthy, so much so that it starts to overwhelm him both mentally and physically. Though before we discuss that, let's first figure out the meaning behind its name and design. Milagro Man, like a lot of the JoJolion stand names, is a name that hasn't been fully sourced or cited by Araki yet in the series. Though, going off of some context clues based on references that appear within JoJolion so far, I think it's fair to assume that the name is in reference to the Ozzy Osbourne song Miracle Man, since Milagro is Spanish for miracle. And the reason I picked the Ozzy-specific version of Miracle Man is that during the Wonder of You arc, Toru was playing with his music player and shifted off of a Ozzy Osbourne song to an Elvis one, which at least to me means that Araki has been listening to Ozzy Osbourne at some points during the writing of JoJolion. I feel like it would make sense that this is where the term Miracle Man came from. Along with that, some elements from Milagro Man, be them visual or not, seem to take inspiration from Miracle Man's own album, as it has things like the stigmata or Christ-like handholds found on the visual design, which might be reference to the concept behind the photo taken for the No Rest for the Wicked album, as conceptualist John Carver was going for an image that positioned Ozzy in a Christ-like fashion, which was proven to be very successful, so much so that the image itself became a legend among music enthusiasts, appearing on dozens of best album art lists around the world. And this album art gaining a legendary status might in fact have influenced the idea behind Milagro Man being an urban legend. Along with this, the song Miracle Man was made as a jab at the recently disgraced televangelist Jimmy Swaggart, who used to be a very vocal critic of Ozzy's music, though his career soon fell to shambles after a scandal in 1988 involving a prostitute, which would result in him having to pay $10 million in damage settlements, but it was reduced to $1.7 million in a settlement outside of court. And in a similar fashion, the ability of Milagro Man spawns from the effect of a large lawsuit levied against an arms dealer of unknown origin who sold fantastic weapons throughout the years and had connections to multiple wars. The lawsuit itself resulted in them having to pay $50 billion in damages, which in turn bankrupted the man, driving him mad. All the blood money that he had made at that point came crashing down on him, to the point that he took his family's life and then threw himself into a fire, ending his own. And when his body was discovered, all that existed next to him was a United States dollar bill with the serial number ending in 13. And this was the origin of the Milagro Man's cursed bill. And soon this bill would find itself traveling the world, changing and taking different forms to match the national currency of the part of the world that it's in. Though no matter the bill, the Milagro Man's currency will always have a serial number ending in 13, though this isn't the kind of money that you want to end up with, as those who take the money into their possession find themselves under the effect of Milagro Man's curse and stand ability, this being monetary manipulation. How the Milagro Man's monetary manipulation works is that the cursed bill, once stolen or claimed by someone else, will shackle itself to its victim. From there, it will begin to influence the world around them, along with anything on their person, starting by turning all the money in their possession into bills with 13 in their serial number. And on top of that, any opportunity to make money, someone will, be it through online betting or the sorts. But when you go to withdraw the money, the same cursed $13 bills will appear. This same effect is applied to coinage as well, even though we're never shown a 13 on the coins. And on top of this, the physical bills will slowly begin to replicate themselves, appearing out of thin air. But any attempt to actually spend any of this money or dispose of it in some way will result in the bills being returned to the user with interest built on top of the spent sum, which isn't always a good thing. The only way to actually rid yourself of the curse is to have someone steal a bill from you, even if they don't know what they're taking is the money, and then have the person destroy it in some way, be it either by ripping or burning the bill in some fashion. Again, they don't need to be consciously aware that they are destroying a bill when they do this. No matter what, if a victim does this, then the curse will be fully transferred off of you onto them, and their only hopes of cleansing themselves is to pass it on to someone else, like some sort of twisted game of old maid. And if a victim doesn't pass on the bill, eventually the bills will replicate and overwhelm their target, suffocating or crushing them either physically or mentally. Now this stand ability, or curse, obviously reflects the in-universe origin of the original Milagro Man, as the years of arms trade resulting in him becoming extravagantly wealthy, even though the way he got rich was by profiteering off of war. This is likely why the only way to pass on the curse is to find someone cruel enough to steal or rob someone blind, which would directly lead to their dirty or blood money crushing down on them, in a similar fashion to what the lawsuit did to the original Milagro Man. Though out of universe, I feel like this curse is likely in reference to the biblical story of the bargain of Judas and the 30 silver pieces, as Steel Ball Run in JoJolion itself has had a lot of major biblical influences over its story, with the title of JoJolion in fact containing the term blessed thing in its name, which means that biblical references are likely being spread throughout the whole of the two parts. Along with this, the main theme of JoJolion so far is based on curses, so it would make sense that a stand ability that is referred to as a curse throughout most of its arc would in some way be related to maybe the origin of a cursed metal, such as silver. And silver was cursed through the 30 silver pieces, as in Judas's bargain, an event that takes place prior to the famous Last Supper, where Jesus reveals that one of his disciples will betray him. The traitor himself, Judas, had gone to the high priestess to strike up a deal with them to reveal Jesus' location for the cost of 30 silver pieces. And after he revealed Jesus' identity in Gethshechem by kissing him in front of the guards, Jesus was handily arrested and later crucified, which could explain why the Milagro Man's physical form has stigmatas on the body, along with why the curse seems to take a form of a positive thing that later becomes a negative thing. But more importantly, Judas got paid his 30 silver, though soon the grief he felt from getting his friend killed would weigh heavily on him, making it impossible for him to do anything with his 30 silver, which in turn drove him to donate it to the church and then hang himself. Though the silver was considered to be tainted or blood money by the church, and they refused to add it to their treasury, instead using it to buy a field that would later be dubbed Potter's Field. Now, aspects of the story seem to be applied to Milagro Man as well, with Judas being paid dirty or bloody money that was impossible to spend, and it ended up crushing his spirit and driving him mad. Along with this, the people who came in contact with the 30 silver wanted nothing to do with it, in a similar fashion to how everyone knows what the Milagro Man bills are. They don't want anything to do with them. And with that, the silver was circulated back into the global economy. So, who's to say that the Milagro Man's curse might be a little bit older than a legend passed down through the years? 13 is an unlucky number in some cultures due to Judas being the 13th person to take a seat at the Last Supper. I mean, with a name like Miracle Man, is it all that weird to make an inherent connection to a biblical story? I don't think so, especially not in JoJolion. But with that in mind, Milagro Man is probably one of the most interesting arcs in the whole of JoJolion, focusing away from the main plot in Josuke for a moment to give us a little mini Joshua adventure, and it's up there as one of my favorite arcs in the entirety of the part. And Araki's mastery over horror and suspense really shines through strong in these two chapters, playing with this uncanny feeling that a weird string of good luck can have on a person's psyche. Along with this, the twisted irony of having all the money in the world but nothing to spend it on really stuck with me, so much so that I find myself returning to these chapters year after year just to enjoy that feeling yet again. Hopefully, you enjoyed this arc as well, or at least I've helped you gain an appreciation for it or the stand involved in it. If you did, feel free to tell me below. But with that all said and done, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more videos like in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com. It's a very helpful tool. It helps keep this channel flowing and moving at the pace that it does. And if you want to spend some of your Milagro Man bucks, well, you can do so by buying a copy of Shimonetta, A Boring Concept with the World. You can do so by buying a copy of Shimonetta at buyshimonetta.com.